Gonna cover the Terraspace version 1 release. For that, I put together this community post right here. I surfaced some highlights that I'm gonna cover here. So the first highlight is non-cloud provider support. Okay, so essentially this is like on-prem support. And folks have been asking for this, and I totally get it, because sometimes you have a data center and you don't want to use a cloud provider, and that world is still quite large actually. So what people were doing was actually they were resorting to some tricks and hackery. What they do is they will actually install like a cloud provider plugin and then ignore it. So while that works, okay, that is non-ideal. So you don't have to resort to that trickery anymore, because non-cloud provider support is officially basically baked in now. And for that, I also added some docs right here. Basically, it's under getting started non-cloud. And you click on create new project here. You'll see Terraspace new project infra. Infra is just the project name there. And then -- plugin none. So that option tells Terraspace that you don't want to use a cloud provider at all, okay? And this was actually quite interesting to implement, because I actually have to remove any assumptions accidentally made in Terraspace core about having a cloud provider available, okay? So those plugins, assumptions are now all gone, okay? Okay, and of course, -- example still works here, okay? And it just generates a very simple starter example, a random pet resource. And that's because I can't make any assumptions. So hopefully that makes the on-prem folks pretty happy here. Next is better and smarter pass-through Terraspace options to Terraform land, okay? So this is something that had been bothering me actually for a while now. So how Terraspace works is it essentially builds a Terraform project in a Terraspace cache folder here. Then it CVs in that folder, and then it runs the kind of required Terraform commands like Terraform init and Terraform apply here, okay? So you would think you could just basically pass in the CLI arguments from Terraspace land and then have that pass through the Terraform land like quite easily. But actually you couldn't do that in older versions, because the underlying library that's actually being used for the CLI options is a popular library called Thor. And the way Thor kind of works is you're supposed to define explicitly your CLI interface up front and explicitly, okay? It's not supposed to be as dynamic, okay? There is kind of some level of control there, but you kind of, it's not supposed to be dynamic, okay? So anyway, so I hacked around that, okay? It wasn't so bad actually once I kind of figured out, but initially it took some effort, okay? So got that working, and the way it works is, I want to point this out. It doesn't just blindly pass the CLI options through, okay? It uses some smarts, okay? And example really explains it, okay? So Terraspace up demo here, upgrade, compact warnings, no color, okay? And essentially that's gonna call Terraform init and Terraform apply, okay? But notice, like, upgrades only pass to init, and compact warnings only pass to apply. And no color is passed to both of them, because guess what? Both of those commands support no color, okay? So what Terraspace does is actually it figures out what underlying command options are available and then only passes those options through as needed, okay? So that actually takes away a lot of thinking for us, so that's great. On top of that, it allows you to use either double dash notation or single dash notation, so it's another thing you don't have to think about, okay? So I'm pretty happy with actually how that turned out. Okay, next is remove Terraspace plugins from core. Okay, so this is another thing that had also been bothering me too. So initially when I shipped Terraspace, basically shipped it with the plugin providers it baked in the core just to get a ship, but I always really wanted those plugin providers out of there. It just it takes some time. So finally got around to removing those plugins. And the nice thing about this is it makes not just core leaner and meaner, it actually allows any plugin provider, let's say if others are written, to be treated like first-class citizens, just like all the other supported providers, okay? So that's pretty nice. This is also mitigating helps some gem dependency graph resolution issues that some folks are having. And basically, kind of what happens is people will install Terraspace, okay? And then like a week later, they upgrade Terraspace. And during that process, it will upgrade actually all their system gems too, okay? And then the project gems actually uses something called gem file lock file that ensures that Terraspace project pins down all the gem dependency versions, okay? But then once you upgrade Terraspace, guess what? Your system gems could not match with the gem file lock. So then what you have to do is you're supposed to prepend bundle exec in front of your commands. That's how it's supposed to work in the Ruby world. But I totally get it. Folks don't like basically prepending or remembering to prepend bundle exec in front of their commands. So they will try to basically go down this rabbit hole of resolving all their system gem dependencies to match with what's in basically gem file lock. And that's not great. It's just a rabbit hole. You can actually just run bundle exec actually, or not bundle exec, bundle update to actually update your gems. And it's, most of the time they actually resolve it too. But instead, what basically is being done now to resolve this issue, and I think it's going to be resolved now. It's essentially the wrapper is smarter. The wrapper will run bundle exec whenever it detects you're inside a Terraspace project for the standalone installer. So this actually should, I think, resolve most of these issues. Okay. And then for some reason, if you don't have that wrapper yet, Terraspace core itself does some detection. Whether or not, if you don't run bundle exec, okay, and if you have multiple versions of gem dependencies that are colliding, okay, and if this error then surfaces, okay, there's a lot of ifs there. Then basically it's gonna print out a friendly message saying, hey, you should generate a shim. And guess what? It tells you what command you need to run too, because there is a baked in generator for a shim. It's one command, you run it one time and then you're kind of set. So I think that should resolve those issues, okay? And then standalone installers now keep proper versioning. So this is something I always want to also do. And same with Docker images, they have proper version too. So going forward, all older versions will be tagged properly and be kept around. So that's really great. And I want to point out that the standalone installer and Docker build process just generally has been dramatically improved. Before, it was just basically build daily, okay? But now it actually builds on the fly as a new gem is released within a couple minutes, essentially. So what basically happens is a gem is kind of pushed to Ruby Gems, that service. That fires off a webhook. That calls the API on the BoltOps side. That BoltOps API then triggers off a build process to build the standalone installers, then in turn build the Docker images, okay? So it was a decent system to actually build, okay? But that's I'm glad actually that's all working out, because now standalone installers and Docker images are gonna be keeping up with the gem releases basically within a few minutes, okay? Lastly, improve the CLI help menu, okay? So a very smart person kind of once told me, you can guess who this smart person is. He's probably written more Terraform modules than anybody else in the world. Okay, it's like, this is great, but the CLI help menu should kind of group the common commands up at the top. So, okay, so that's now done, okay? So you just run Terraspace, okay, with -H for help, or you can actually just run Terraspace like that, and that's gonna print out the help menu. You can see all the main commands are now grouped at the top, okay? And then the other commands that you might want to learn, it's down here, okay? And I also want to point out, look, down here, there's a reference documentation right here, okay? So all the CLI help is also available online, okay? So it's actually generated from the CLI help here, so it's the same reference documentation. But that's available too, so you should check that out if you're trying to learn these commands and trying to learn how to use them. Okay, so that pretty much covers kind of all the important highlights and changes in the Terraspace V1 release here. I'm really kind of happy with the way this kind of turned out. Hopefully you are too, and hopefully this was helpful. Thanks.